in a minute.
Oh,
Put it in.
right, over to you.
If you do give me a sec. The little thing's gone over where it says. Let me move that because it says participant trying to get in. We can see this, so I'm going to get rid of that. Right, so we've got it from the beginning. I'm putting it on slideshow so everybody can see it. Right, that's great. Well, I'm Becky Oxley. Thank you everybody for attending. Much appreciated. As Catherine says, the presentation is going to be recorded, the slides and the presentation recording is sent out afterwards. My presentation today is on how company policies affect neurodivergent, the way neurodivergent people are treated. Feel free to ask any questions throughout. Raise your hand, yell out to me, or put it in the chat. I have no preference, and it's not going to disturb me or interrupt me at all because that's not how my brain works. So yeah, feel free to communicate in any way that suits yourself. It's not death by PowerPoint or anything like that. I've actually only got 8 slides because I decided a different approach to my last presentation which I thought went really well, but there was too many slides. So this time I'm having it more as half slides, half of a group discussion. So as I say, my presentation, just to repeat, is on how company policies affect neurodivergent people. It's mainly from my own personal experience of 20, I'm going to be honest, 20 plus years, but I said 20 plus years. I just look young. And also external research that I've done. And so, as I said before, it's in 2 halves. So my experience and then group discussion to get everybody involved, hopefully. As I say, if you don't want to say anything, you don't have to, though. There is no pressure either way. So most of us will be familiar with the Equality Act 2010. Now, this, I do believe, gives, I quote, some level of protection, because it's great that the law is there, and it's great that this will put in place, and I know it has helped a lot of us. But I say some level of protection because unless employers really understand what we mean by reasonable adjustment, what we're asking isn't special treatment, and they actually understand and are aware of this law themselves, it still leads to conflict in the workplace. It's still challenging for a neurodivergent person, and if employers don't understand it, then you end up either, like, sometimes it's disciplinary action or the employee leaving. So, it's great that it's there, but more work needs to be done. Which actually leads me quite nicely onto many companies having either an EDI or an FIR policy, although this is not a legal requirement. It's just really regarded as good practice. Most in the construction and infrastructure industry, where I've spent my career, do tend to have these policies in place. Now, some companies have an EDI, which stands for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, and others have FIR, which stands for Fairness, Inclusion and Respect. Now, I've done research to try and find out, is one better than the other? What's the difference? I've asked, we've recently changed, the company I work for has recently changed from EDI to FIR. And basically their reasoning behind that was, they said it's more inclusive, and the construction infrastructure companies are going more for fairness, inclusion and respect, because it's more inclusive than equality, diversion and inclusion. But to be honest, they're pretty much the same thing, and it's interchangeable. When tendering for jobs, particularly in the infrastructure and construction sector, we tender for a lot of government contracts and councils and things like that. They ask that you have to show that you've got this policy, so you have to demonstrate, you have to tick the box to say you've got it. And then a lot of companies are going one step further than that when they're tendering, and they're asking you to demonstrate your commitment to being a fairness, inclusion, respect employer, which is good, because that is forcing that change. And that's coming because companies won't always do stuff if there's not a financial incentive. And basically the financial incentive for these policies and for companies to embrace different people is the fact that if they want to win these multi-million-pound tenders, often they need to be demonstrating this. So that's actually a positive change, which then leads me quite nicely onto the supply chain sustainability school. Now, I put links into the slides so people can access them later. You probably aren't going to be that familiar with the school unless you're in the industry, but it's a completely free resource for anybody, and it is brilliant. I've got to say, it's been going 10 plus years. It's completely free. Basically, large construction companies pay pay like a yearly membership, and then everybody else around the sector adds things in. So there's actually a training module on fairness, inclusion and respect. You can do some little tests at the end of various different modules as well, and you can get certificates, so that again, if you're going for jobs, that's helpful. And as I say, completely free. You don't need to set an account up if you just want to access odd bits, but if you want to access the full site, you need to just put a few details in. Basically, you've got an account, and then it's all completely free. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that. And there's an FIR flyer, which again, I put the link to that as well. So yeah, I can't recommend that enough, to be honest, because the reason, again, the supply chain school do it and the other construction companies and infrastructure companies get involved is the fact that they are recognizing the importance of a diverse workforce, and the fact that if they are an inclusive employer, it actually makes, and it's been proven, you know, I've seen statistics where it says by a diverse workforce, you can be 50% more profitable, and you're retaining staff, because a happy workforce is a more productive workforce. That's just me. So yeah, so how can we use these policies to benefit us? So this is just my personal recommendations. But first of all, I would check that your organisation has either a fairness and inclusion and respect or an equality, diversity and inclusion policy. If they don't, I would recommend that they put one in place. You can get, they're on everybody's website, everybody's talking about them, so you'd be easily able to find one to basically to get some pointers from. And then I would familiarise yourself with the policy, partly because, as I said, the Equality Act 2010 is great, but by having this policy, if somebody in the organisation's put it together and they've got this policy in place, if you are having any issues with any colleagues or managers or anything like that, you know, giving them a gentle nudge to the direction of this policy, and then, you know, it just helps. It's just a helping hand. And again, it's the way we should all be treated. If they've got this policy, I mean, without the policy, we should be treated in this way. But if they've got the policy, then we neurodivergent or for any other reason, we should be treated in a fair way, with respect, and fully included. So part two, again, this is more about the reality of what I've seen over the last 20 years. Many large companies have these policies, which I say is great. And there's a lot of talk on, if you Google any company, mainly on their website, especially if they're going for government contracts, will be all over their website promoting what they do, how a fair employer they are, you know, how they cover everything and how they support loads of different types of people. But which I say is brilliant, and there's a lot of discussions. I know within my organisation there is a lot to try and emphasise that this is what we do as a business. However, what I've discovered, and what from talking to many other people and our group discussion on the last talk, was even though there's policies in place, that the Equality Act, how individuals with neurodiversion are treated often depends not on having these policies or the law, but on who your line manager is, who's in your team, who's your colleague. Do they know somebody who's got it? Are they an understanding person? So suddenly it's still a lot of a system more than, you know, the norm. So it's about how do we change that? And I think it's education, it's having a voice, it's talking about it, it's raising the profile. I mean, a few months back, I sat on a round table discussion that was open to all my organisation, and I raised that exact point to everybody. It's absolutely brilliant having these policies, but without action, you know, then the policies mean nothing. We don't just need words, we need action. And it's how, maybe as a group, how do we collectively try and change that? Because, you know, we've all got a voice, and I think we should use it. It's just my opinion, which leads me nicely on to our group discussion. I appreciate it's white writing on a blue background, so I'm going to read through all the points for our discussion, and then after that I'll read through each one individually. So yeah, so points to discuss: but also feel free to chip in anything else. These were just the ones that I thought of. Does your company have, are you aware if your company has a fairness, inclusion and respect, or an equality, diversity and inclusion policy? Has anybody actually used these policies to help them get any reasonable adjustments or support? What can be done to make these policies more impacting for people that they actually put in place to help? Because again, having a bit of paper is great, but if we need to make them have an impact. What action can be taken? Can we take as an individual or as a group to try and drive some change forward? And then basically changing it, as I said on the other slide, changing it from words on paper to meaningful action. So that is pretty much me. As I say, as the presentation itself relatively short, because I think we'll all get more out of a discussion, because we'll have all obviously experienced different things over our life in the workplace. So hopefully that was useful. I don't know if there's been any chats or anything like that. So nobody yelled out and nobody raised their hand. So yeah, do we want to run through the chat first?
There is no comment in the chat, but what would be useful is if you copy and paste those questions into the chat, Becky.
Okie dokie, let's see if I can do that.
And stop the share.
All right, I'll stop the share, and right, let me see how I get them into the chat. That bit I'm not so sure of. Give me a little minute.
Otherwise, I can have a go.
Yeah, if you don't mind having a go, that would be great, and I'll continue discussing while you're having a go. So, has anybody got any questions? And don't be shy. I know people have questions. Linda, I'm looking at you.
I don't really have a question, Becky, but what you were talking about just made me think, I do the adult screenings for the Dyslexia Association. And I did a screening with a man who works for Sainsbury's. And Sainsbury's have this big thing, don't they?
Yeah.
When you go in their store, they say, they support people with hidden disability. Well, they support people with disabilities, but they also make a point of saying that not all disabilities are obvious. Anyway, he's been given a really hard time. So I did a screening with him and sent him the letter that I send, and he took that to them, and so yeah, so I think they were working on sacking him. That was my impression. But because of the letter, they didn't sack him, but they took away all his, like Sainsbury's staff get these sort of
like discounts, I would imagine, and perks.
Yeah, and those sorts of things. And I just thought, gosh, that just sounds so rubbish. And I just thought I should be able to do something about that. And I mean, just what you were saying, I mean, maybe I should look into what.
I bet on Sainsbury's website, I bet they have got a section, because again, the sort of organisation and size that they are, I bet a pound to a penny they've got one saying that they are the fairness, inclusion and respect.
Yeah. But it just sounded, I mean, obviously I don't know the full story, but I just thought that just, okay, so they've recognised that he does have a disability, so they're not going to sack him, but they're not, but they've taken away all his privileges.
Yeah, they're not supporting him, which is what they're doing with that, isn't it? They're not sacking him, they're just making it so he leaves of his own accord by making it uncomfortable for him, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's it, yeah, because there'll be repercussions if they sack him, because now he's registered with a disability and he's got the paperwork for review, so they won't sack him, but they're hoping he's going to leave of his own accord now.
No, well, but I suppose what you I did actually feel that I should do something more about this, and actually your talk has made me think I'm actually going to do something more about that.
Oh, brilliant. No, I'm really pleased.
I'm going to go onto their website, I can see what they say, and I'm going to follow it up, because I just thought that just really sounds rubbish.
Yeah, it does. It seems really, really unfair. So yeah, if you check the website out, you can guarantee they will have a policy. And Yeah, and I'd be tempted to contact them as well, to be honest, and ask some questions, because you could even do that under the badge of of us, couldn't you, realistically? And
No, I did already say to him,
all right.
sound right. I think it was his mother that I was in contact with, because she, you know, he's obviously somebody who's sort of got limited resources, and I think I was in contact with his mother, and I was saying this really doesn't sound right. But anyway, I'm going to go back to it. So your talk has inspired me to do that, because it was one of those things where I was feeling quite uncomfortable about it and thinking, could I do more about this? But I am going to do more about it.
Oh, perfect! Happy day. Well, if nothing else, you've made my day. So yeah, because that's that's one of the things what really gets me when I have with discussions, when I have them with like some other people, where nobody takes an action afterwards. And to me, we need action. So I'm really pleased that you're going to be doing something.
Okay, there's a lot of response to that discussion in the chat, and people.
Is there? Okay.
Constructive dismissal, actually. So we've got Andrew, then we've got Linda, then we've got James, and then we've got Andre.
Perfect. Andrew, do you want to go first then in that case? Fire away.
Yeah, so I just wanted to pick up on firstly what Lois said. So many years ago, between 1999 and 2005, I actually worked for Sainsbury's. And I can tell you, it's all very lip service. So in terms of being able to do the practical stuff, they always used to complain, because I used to do with the refunds. And back then, you know, the handwritten scripts, writing everything into a box. I said, why do you give them a computer system there? Why can't I use Excel? I'm studying, you know, business studies. Why can't we use Excel and I can email that up to you? No, we don't want that. And like, I couldn't use my coloured overlays, because obviously these glasses weren't invented kind of back then, or I couldn't get hold of them, put it that way. And I've got a friend that's worked for Sainsbury's I've known him since 2005, and he does get put upon because he hasn't got very many qualifications. He's worked there, and he's always kind of worked in the back door. But the reason why I put my hand up originally was that I wanted to see if you had any kind of experience where there's kind of complex kind of neurodiversity, because sometimes many of us, especially those on the spectrum as well, can be subject to kind of CPTSD or PTSD. And obviously, you know, that can instigate other complex issues. Because I feel that there is, in terms of dyslexia, there is a lot of awareness. And also, if someone has experienced discrimination, people may not speak up, because the employment rate, unfortunately, for being on the autistic spectrum is still ridiculously low. And so I get a bit frustrated at times, because I can do things at a higher level than my boss, but I don't get paid to do that job. But, you know, I have been there slightly less time than her, but it is only like 16% of people on the autism spectrum actually working full time. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of mention.
Just to say that we are recording. So Jen quite rightly put in the chat. Is everybody aware that we're recording? So, you know, we're talking about a particular company quite a lot. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
I don't mind. They put their name out there as supporting people with disability and otherwise, and you know, I mean, you know.
It was the same with my boss. She Carol, she was a wonderful lady, also dyslexic and really good, and she got put upon, you know, as the assistant manager, but this was a long time ago, and she's in her 70s now. But no, I just wanted to explore whether it can actually work in practice, because the Equality Act, in my experience, is kind of very much a lip service. And I'm a member of Unison, and you can contact them, but they're not necessarily disability trained. You know, they take quite a expensive direct debit out of my bank account each month. And in the past, we're like, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't have taken the job on if you've got a disability. And I'm like, what? And this is a union.
No, you are right. Well, I had a conversation with the union, not at this job, at my previous job, and the guy asked me when I spoke to him, well, this dyslexia, so that's how he referred to it. This dyslexia, does it come and go then? I was like, you are here. You're supposed to be helping me, and you don't even know what it is. Right? I was like, this is alarming. And he's like, I've been doing it for a very long time. And I thought, how? You know, this is the level of quality I'm
You've been
getting.
doing it badly.
Yeah,
They
that's
probably
exactly.
they don't have to be disability trained, you see, and they kind of can get away with it. But yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why I've been, since I started my last company, and as I'm an ambassador on the fairness, inclusion, and respect. But I've been very vocal about my dyslexia because of this group, really, because it's given me a lot more confidence. So I am very open about it. I was open when I started with the job, and I've been trying to get more awareness at work, because I've spoken to several dyslexic people now through doing different talks, and they've messaged me privately, and some said they don't want to disclose it because of fear of basically it'll be a career sabotaging move, even though the company I work for are very much saying, you know, you can be open about it, but nobody really is. We've got one guy who's open about his autism and everything, and he does anytime anybody's doing any write-ups or anything, it's one guy, and then there's me with a lonely little dyslexic voice, you know, and there's more.
But then again, when I go on the television, one of the presenters kind of PAs on GB News was like, do you really need those glasses on? I said, I will be wearing them. I'm entitled to wear, I need to wear them because of my disability. Oh yeah, you're the one guy we let come on because the viewers like you. And so I kind of get away, but I've been on 9 times and I insist on it. And I'm like, no, it's supposed to be the people's channel. And you've asked for my opinion, you know. I'll shut up for a minute.
Good points. Linda.
Hi. Yeah, sorry about the mess with the emails, everybody. Just thinking about what was said about the Sainsbury's scenario, which I think is replicated in many companies. Depends on the manager.
Yeah.
Where I live, there's a Waitrose, and we have a man who's been working there for 25 years. He's absolutely delightful. He has learning difficulties. Sometimes he has problems with his boundaries. Most of the time he doesn't, and he asks you if he's going too far. Am I saying too much? Am I too in your face? And you know, you have to, everyone loves him, and actually the customers protect him. You can see some staff get irritated and upset. They need help and support to manage their responses to him, because he conducts his job. He does what he is required to do. Customers adore him. He will always help you if he can. And people need to think about their own experiences. So when you were saying earlier on, Becky, about the need for greater training and not just playing lip service, when you actually see it in operation, it is actually a wonderful thing. But 25 years this person has been in this job, and he manages it well. But I'm also aware of somebody else that worked there. I need to be careful. And they didn't have such a good experience. And that's because their disability wasn't so immediately obvious, but it was there. And interesting enough, they've now gone to work for a certain supermarket down the road. And I hope it isn't him that you're calling about. I'm being really cautious here. The difficulty we have is that you have managers who just see someone who's failing, and they get quite angry because they've employed you. And they saw this articulate, intelligent, creative person at the interview, and then they've given you something to do. And I think I refer in my paper to the dyslexic stare. Something changes in the way that people respond to you when they realize that you don't act in the same way as them.
Exactly, yeah.
And then you get a bit of a bullying vibe, and actually I don't really want to be around you. You make me uncomfortable. You're not obviously different, but you are different, and I don't like your difference, and I don't know how to respond to your difference. And you know, this is how you make a cup of tea. And if anybody, there will be one person in the entire world who recognizes that, and a number of individuals who witnessed it and who never did anything.
Yeah.
So everyone's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's true.
And we're
so
all
true.
struggling. We're all struggling. But the person that had their perks taken away, that is, I've called that constructive dismissal, and I've been down that road. I had all my training taken away, and I wasn't allowed to go to my support meetings, and I wasn't allowed this, and I wasn't allowed that. And I just said to my union rep, that's constructive dismissal. I gave her a big bundle of precedents, that's legal precedents where it's gone to tribunal. Rare that it's ever linked to disability. It's often about other things. And the reason people don't go forward to tribunal is because it's terrifying.
And they make it terrifying. That's the thing. They make it terrifying, and you have to know your rights to be even to get that far. Like you said, you did all them legal precedents, but unless you understand your rights and you just like
it's my business to know that stuff. So I was saying, actually, the Equality Act, you can't, but it didn't matter. I was still forbidden from doing it, and we were starting the process of dealing with that when another route was found to get rid of me. But what I'm trying to say is that we've got a group of people who feel oppressed, and we've got a group of people who are oppressed by having to deal with difference. They don't want to deal with it. They've got enough hassle in their lives. They've got enough targets to meet. This person is stopping them from meeting their target, and it can become bitter and entrenched really, really quickly. When I left work, I found an organisation that many of us might have dealt with, exceptional individuals. They can support people through this process at work. And often they can be a bit more useful than the union rep, because as a previous speaker said, they don't
get it.
They're not trained. They're just members of the workforce, and they're not given sufficient training with this. And to get to speak to a lawyer, it's too late. By the time you're actually talking to a lawyer, it is too late. And I managed to speak to a lawyer via exceptional individuals and get some legal advice online, which I then used productively. So it's the problem is that your whole work situation becomes you fighting the system, rather than people saying, well, this is the policy, this is the procedure, this is what we should be doing, and following it. And of course, then, as our discussion went last time we all spoke, if it doesn't work, what do you do then? And I think the chat's reflecting that as well. If it doesn't work, what do we do then?
You're talking about things that have happened in the past, and quite rightly, but Becky's talking about what's happening now with this EDI and FIR. And Becky, do you see there to be a change because of these policies?
I see there's an attempt to start. Yeah, I think there's a willingness, which I think it wasn't there. It definitely wasn't there 10 years ago. I think we've still got a long way to go, but there is definitely more of a willingness now than ever before. I think we see it's slow, and I think it depends organisation to organisation, and I think it still depends on who you've got as your direct boss, or who's around you in your team. I think that still makes a big difference, but there is definitely a step change. I mean, when I moved to this organization, I told them, I put it on my CV, and I said I told them what I needed when I got there, and it was all waiting for me. And that's a real positive step change. But then, because there's still very much of a lack of education, what the people not understanding, some of the stuff that I'm asked to do, and some of the stuff that's like sometimes in meetings, or I think if they truly understood it, I wouldn't necessarily get asked to do some of that stuff, and sometimes feel under the pressure. But I don't think there's necessarily an intent with any malice. I think it's just a lack of understanding, and that's why I'm thinking we need to change it, because we've got policies, and I think a lot of these policies are just basically good common courtesy and kindness. I think when you take everything, when you strip it all back, it's just treating people right. And I think we just need to drive that forward more. But you only get that, they only treat people right if they understand what right is. And like Linda says, because it's all right when businesses are doing well and everything like that, it changes more the minute anybody's under pressure. Like when you hit a recession and everybody's like targets, suddenly that consideration is gone out of the window because they're under pressure. And I think then it starts to roll down on everybody else. So, but I do see with the policies and companies trying to endorse it. And I think if you raise, I mean, I've not needed to where I am, but I think if I raised anything, I think it would be taken more seriously where I weren't now. I think there would definitely be action taken. So I see that as a very positive, a positive change. And the CEO, he said he was going to take it to the board when I don't, nothing got fed back to me, so I don't know, but he did say after I did the last neurodivergent talk that it needed to be raised higher up when I said more things need to be put in place, a greater awareness needs, and possibly some management training, just so everybody's aware and it's not just a small group. So the fact that they're looking into it, I would say is positive, because 10 years ago, that wouldn't have happened. In the supply chain school that's actually dedicated a full like module on it, and that's open to everybody across the industry, and they're constantly emailing out recommending that people do this course. That wouldn't have happened a few years ago. So the more, I think, when we get rid of some of the older people in the industry and we get more younger blood in who sort of understand it, I think we will get better. I think the issue you've got at the moment is we've still got a lot of old school people who it's, well, this is the way we do it. There were none of that in my day. It was there, it just wasn't recognised. All these conditions have always been around. It's not a new thing. So it's education and keeping that momentum up. And I think we'll see more positive. I think the next 10 years will be interesting. I think we will hope to see more change, but we've got to drive it, otherwise it's not going to get there on its own. Especially, I would say, because everybody's fighting for their place to be acknowledged, because obviously you've got Pride Month, you've got Black Lives Matter, you've got all these different things that companies are wanting to talk about and needing to talk about and needing to address, but we need to make sure that neurodiversity's got a slot on that table, and you only get that by people keeping vocal about it, otherwise it gets forgotten.
Have to kick open the door.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. James, did you want to speak? Hello, James.
Have I managed to unmute myself? I believe so.
Yeah, you're here.
You with us?
Yes, yes. Interesting. Yes, there has been an awful lot of change. And I have recently, I'd say, actually, just over 2 years ago, I did change employer, where I joined one organization where initially the HR department were absolutely brilliant. Unfortunately, now next week is probably going to cause a few giggles. I took into work a copy of a book which was full of pictures of babies, all under 24 hours old. Both HR officers took it home, and 10 months later, both of them had babies. So you can't make me directly responsible for that, but
not in case you're sharing something else with us all.
no. But anyway, the issue was that the collective knowledge of the HR department was lost. So they had a new HR officer, and also they've gone for matrix management, and the training wasn't carried over. And I'd quietly asked, wrote letter from home formally asking. It took a month for them to get round to actually looking at that. And so by that time, you go looking for somewhere else. So 2 years ago, I changed, and let's say I work for a branch of an aviation organization, which does have a facility in Filton, Bristol. I won't name, but you can probably work out from that. Anyway, I am part of the the employee resource group with regards to neurodiversity. When I landed, I got access to work to run various bits and pieces. When I had a change of line management, I convinced the then the new the new HRBP, to use the modern words, HR officer in old speak, to get geniuses within to do some training, and got the big bosses invited. The big bosses said, yes, this is very good. And the big bosses decided that everybody on site will attend, and that it's the same trainer there's talks of the same trainer being asked to deliver the same training to 400 more individuals across 2 further European countries. And the larger organization is starting to take note. So there is a tide changing. However, it is entirely dependent on the performance of the local management. Sometimes the local management do not match what the higher organization is expecting. So if you get comments which you consider are adverse, if they are in email, keep them. If you're in a meeting and things aren't going quite well, and you think something's not quite what you expect, drop them an email. Ask them to clarify what they said. So the important thing is, or even if somebody says something that's off, send an email about it from yourself to yourself on the work account. So if things go to tribunal, or you need to make legal representation, there's an audit trail.
Yeah, you definitely need a paper trail. Paper trail is key.
Yes, because otherwise things can progress and it's difficult to actually prove how bad things have got.
Yeah, you need evidence. Evidence. Yeah, we should have said that if things aren't going well, documenting everything is really, really important. The more information you've got, the stronger position you're in.
Also, if you're in a bad patch, remember that the employment tribunal needs to run promptly. What I mean is, you need to get the paperwork in within 6 months.
But what I would say is, if you've if it gets to that stage, I would always try and use some of the policies to try and
True. Yes.
To try and guide them, and because I think sometimes employees are, like they said, there is malicious intent, and other times I think it's just a lack of understanding, and when you point it out to them, or they don't even realize that they're doing something. So I think if you can guide them back round to letting them know.
Yes, I mean, yes, now I'm a little bit older and a little bit wiser. So if I get a comment about my performance, then it's not been unknown for me to write a letter to, dear Mr. Manager, I was sorry to learn of this. It was disappointing that this matter had not been brought to my attention before, particularly as there was certain training in progress which could have dealt with some of the issues thus raised, and so on.
No, it's good. No, it's useful.
Equally, I have found the unions can be somewhat variable, and also if you're not a member of good standing with the union for the last 2 years, it's too late once you start having trouble, because they won't help you.
Yeah, no, you have to be a member of them early.
Also, equally, I am a member of what could be described as a professional body. Likewise, they didn't get how to support me. Also, when I had a problem employer and I phoned the internal support, the internal whistleblowing line, they didn't want to listen, even though the management were putting me through a formal investigation when there was a overdue stress management plan. So
did they have any policies in place? Was it some time ago? Did they have any policies or anything that you could refer to?
This is around about 6 years ago, and it was a question of it was a UK office a total UK office around about 100, 150 of a large American organisation. I was told I was the only dyslexic in the company.
Yeah, so they're not taking it seriously, or they're not making it a comfortable environment for people to be honest either. But
No.
also it's just not possible, is it? There's no way you can be the only one. I mean, I've had similar discussions with people.
Yes.
Since I've
yeah.
started doing the talks, and 3 different people have told me that they've been told they're the only one. I'm like, and they're like, well, really interested to see you do your talk. I'm like, yeah, you're not the only one. There is lots of us. When 1 in 10 statistically is dyslexic or on the spectrum, you know, there is a high degree that there's lots of people in the way, and certain industries, particularly like I said, construction and infrastructure, they actually attract more because there's a lot of engineers and there's a lot of guys and girls that work on the tools who, you know, people that are often quite like good with their hands rather than than necessarily wanting to write stuff. So yeah, then when people quote figures like that, you know, them figures aren't right.
So that did take a lot of pushing. Catherine, you are on mute.
Sorry, am I?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Andre is waiting quite patiently, actually. I think probably it's time to move on to the next person.
Okay.
Is that okay, James?
Fine. Yes.
Made some really, really good points, and you know, you've absolutely vividly shown how difficult it can be and how complex it can be in the work isolating.
Yes.
So Andre.
Hi, Andre.
Hiya, Becky. This has actually been really, really interesting, and I think I've been just like looking at everybody and listening to everyone, and obviously you've taken a few years to go through different processes yourself with your employment and figure out all these things. So for me, it's actually been quite insightful, and listening to people's stories. Things have happened to me many years ago when dyslexia wasn't quite recognised. I was failed within an airline situation. I wasn't even given a checklist of things to do. Got on board an aircraft, showed it once, and then the next time on the way home I had to do everything and was failed. And I said, well, I'm dyslexic, I need a checklist. And they just went, well, tough luck, basically. You're going to get one more try, and if you fail, you won't get your promotion. So anyway, but that's not actually the question I wanted to ask you, but it just kind of brought back a few memories.
Well, yeah, it would. I'm going to say, because like you say, it's just, there's no recognition, isn't there? That's the thing. The penny doesn't drop when you tell people. It's just like, oh, and then they move on. Like yeah, it is. Well, I still have that quite a lot, even like now when I say I need copies of people's notes. Nobody gives me copies of the notes. Literally, we've all sat in the same meeting. I can see everybody scribbling down. I'm thinking, I can't read my notes. If I can't dictate them in straight afterwards, I'm not going to be able to remember them. But still, and people are, I don't think with people I work with, they're particularly trying to be me. It just doesn't register, even though I keep asking. And I'm like, nope. It's like the lift has not gone to the top floor.
No, definitely not. And it can be frustrating because you just need that little bit of, you know, recognition and help with it, tiny little bit.
No, you're like you say, we're not asking for a lot, we're not asking for the earth.
Exactly. We're able to cope, but people don't always kind of, when they hear dyslexia, they go, what's that?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and then that's it. And sometimes because they don't want to admit that they don't know what it is, they just don't say anything, and you're thinking, and then you're like, but now you're not helping. Yeah. Or the other thing, I had a conversation with a lady only yesterday, and she thought she might have got it, but wasn't. But I don't think I have. But other people, because it doesn't, the letters don't dance around on the page. I'm like, that's not the only thing that I have dyslexia. The words don't dance around. Oh, do they not? No, they don't. So yeah, it's again, people just lack of understanding.
Yeah, it is definitely. And a lot of people say to me, so you can't write and you can't spell. And I look at them and I say, well, there's different aspects to dyslexia. And I said, that isn't one of mine, but yeah, that can be part of it. So I try and educate people, but it goes over their heads.
It does.
The question I suppose I was going to ask, and I don't know if you know, Becky, I don't know what policies my company have. I work on a reception desk. There's 3 people on the daytime that share a job, and then there's security at night and weekend. I'm not sure if I can get reasonable adjustments because we all have the same login. Do you know how that works, or is it anything?
I think you should still be able to get them. I would ask if there's policy, and even check the website, depending on what sort of organisation they might have got it on the website saying that they've got it. They may not, but I would ask, because you should still be able to get there, even if you're all sharing the same password. Because if they're just doing stuff to make it more easier for you, chances are these other people might find it beneficial. I mean, I was talking to a guy at a different event, and he was saying, I was talking about the Dragon software when I said I was dyslexic, and he said that somebody at their workplace, he was going back a few years, he says they weren't dyslexic, just one person was, but when they point out how quick it could get through using Dragon than typing, the whole business started using it, you know. So he says because it was just efficient. So sometimes, even though the adjustment is for you, it actually benefits others. So I would definitely suggest it and say, these are what I need, and actually it might benefit others. It benefits me because of my dyslexia, and I know we all share the same password, but actually it might make things easier for everybody.
Okay, yeah, good point. Thank you very much.
No problem. And definitely let us know how you get on next time. I'm going to say let us know if anything be put in place.
I will. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Linda, I can see your hand up next.
Okay, just to quickly really going back to the point about how isolating the process can be, and James's point about keeping your emails and keeping your paper chain. While my union rep had no active knowledge of my difficulty, my particular difference, they were very aware of disability issues because they themselves had that. But where they were really helpful is in that arena. They supported me. I didn't feel isolated. There was also a wonderful group run in my organisation for people with disability, which was absolutely wonderful, except they struggled to understand that dyslexia was a disability for a while, because what I was saying earlier on about, this makes me feel uncomfortable and I don't know what to do about it, and I think I'm just going to leave the room because I don't understand what's going on. So it's really important that if you are in difficulties with your employer, you are in some sort of sense of jeopardy, then it's important to keep that paper trail going. It's important to make sure you get some sort of support and not to be isolated, because it's the isolation that eventually gets you.
Yeah, true.
And the other thing is that we are all entitled to an access to work assessment. And it doesn't matter what role you have within an organisation. If you have a protective characteristic, you are entitled to an assessment, and it is for your organisation to work out how they can best implement it, where it is reasonably applicable. So that's just, I wanted to just say that. But I think we need sometimes talk about the psychological impact of all of this, and in particular that sense of isolation and that sense of difference, which isn't visible. It's not tangible, you can't touch it, but you experience it and you feel it. And I think most of us probably recognize and empathize with that. So I just wanted to say that.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I also think, like I say, it's the mental health side that it then affects, because like you say, it's the isolation and thinking, is it me? Am I being unreasonable? Because we instantly say that to ourselves, don't we? And without having, like I say, a group like this or other people to discuss it with, which when we've all been going through stuff was way before this group. So it's being able to like I say, mentally be able to discuss and to share and know that you're not on your own, and being able to get allies in the workplace as well. But that's why I think, again, the talking, the changing, because when you were talking, it reminded me of as a conversation a few weeks ago at work. We had a Champions Day, what brought the mental health, the FER and the safety people all together in a room. And one of the guys stood up and he's in a senior position, and he said, well, it's about being respectful to each other and listening and this, that and the other. And I thought, hold on a minute, a week before that, we went up to a meeting, and before it started, and I was trying to explain the situation. And for me to explain, well, like a lot of dyslexic people, I give the story. So I am a talker, and I like to explain things. So I wanted to give him a bit of background to give it context and everything. And he went, I don't need all that. You should have just, I just needed the end bit, and cut me dead. And that's part of my personality. And I thought, you've just stood up and said this, but you're not giving me that space, you know. So I do think there's still a lot of work to be done in that environment, and how like you say, it messes with your head afterwards.
Mm.
Well, we'll get to that point where we will ask that question a bit later on. Which
Yeah.
forward. Dee is the next person who wants to ask a question.
Hi guys.
Eddie.
Hi there. Hiya. Thanks Becky for the talk. So the last three people have said things that I want to now respond to. So in terms of Andre, with what Linda said, access to work, definitely. And I'm thinking that, you know, maybe access to work will be able to reimburse a company to get you a laptop or something like that. And so, you know, you have your computer, you're all log in, IT can sort all those kind of things out, and you'll have your assistive tech on the laptop. So maybe that's an option anyway. Then there was, oh dear, I'm going to forget now what I wanted to say. And it has gone. I think you'll have to come back to me.
Don't worry, I'm going to say that.
No. The last thing you said, Becky, about what you said in that meeting, I was thinking, because you always say at our meetings how, you know, you're a champion and you're very, you know, you're always
vocal. Yeah.
Sorry?
I'm very vocal, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you explain in your workplace, you know, what your situation is and everything. And I just kind of wondered if you could maybe say how you tell your story, and so we can kind of, those of us who maybe are not able to kind of put things together about how we would like to kind of tell our colleagues or whatever, we could get some tips from how you have done it in the past in your workplace and in the meetings that you go to.
Yeah. Well, I have to be honest, I have to tell people all the time, because I go to a lot of different events and a lot of different people.
Mhm.
So what I'm quite open when I started this job, because of the issues I had when the last company I got taken over, and they weren't very obliging and stuff. So I put it in my CV, and I explained it when I started at the interview. So therefore, with the MD. So I thought, he knows, and he sits at the top of the chain. So, you know, I thought that was the first bit. And then I knew that I looked at the website before I started, and I knew they were broadcasting that there was an EDI at that point, employer. So, you know, there was all about equality and wanting to be seen and doing the right things. I thought, well, that works. And because I knew what I needed when I started, so I knew that for me to be able to do my work, I needed a headset, I needed Dragon, or anything that would dictate, but mainly Dragon for me, because I know how that works. So I told them what I needed, and I said I need the read and write. And I also explained because when I first started, I had a different line manager, and they didn't get it, and they didn't get me, because they was like, well, it only takes 5 minutes. And I kept resisting. I'm like, well, it doesn't only take me 5 minutes. It's going to take me a lot longer to do what you're asking me to do when it's coming to the writing. So I kept fighting back, which didn't go down particularly well, but I didn't stop, because I kept saying, but part of my role is talking to clients, and I'm quite fortunate that I get on well with people, and clients was talking very positively about me and feeding that back and providing me with the information that the organisation wanted. So even though I may not be able to fill the database in very well, and I may not be able to write these reams of stuff, what she was asking me for, the main bosses were like, well, actually, you're bringing the work in, you're getting the stuff from the clients that we haven't been able to get from other people. So So I push the benefits rather than the stuff. I highlight what I can do and try and downplay the stuff that I can't do. And then on top of that, like when I go to meetings, because I have to go to a lot of client meetings, and sometimes it's just me and one client, and I actually find that easier than when I go with a colleague sometimes, if there's two of us, because they're writing notes, but they don't always share the notes, which drives me up the wall. Whereas I'm thinking, if there's just me and the client, I actually say to them, I says, would you mind when they give me some details and names of jobs and inquiries and people, and I have a notepad, because I don't take a laptop, because I find working with a laptop in a meeting or anytime quite difficult. So I take pen and paper, and then I shove my pen and paper in front of them, and I say, would you mind handing the paper over, writing me that down, because I'm dyslexic. And then I point out, I know I could have a recorder in doing it, but we won't feel comfortable with a recorder, because then you can't talk freely. I know they wouldn't feel comfortable with the recorder from the conversations I have. So they're like, oh, no, that's better. They're happy. And then I say to them, would you be willing to actually send me some more information on email, so I've got everything? And I actually end up getting more information sometimes, because I'm so open and honest. And I also think you create a bit of a bond with people, because you're being a bit vulnerable and you're giving a bit of yourself to that person by saying, actually, I'm putting it out there. Because what I've discovered from like being so open with people is that everybody has that bit of vulnerability, that there's something that they don't feel they're very good at, or something that they struggle with. And with you being open, probably 99% of the time, people are really, really decent. There is the odd one, there is the odd percent of people that can be really funny and make life difficult, but most have been really, really helpful. So that's what I do. And as I was saying to Catherine before we started, I was up in Edinburgh yesterday at an event, and I needed to get lots and lots of details. Nobody does business cards, so I had my paper again, and I said, I'm dyslexic, would you mind writing your own email address down? You know, and I said that to everybody, because I think we need to stop being, because for years I was ashamed and stuff, and now I think to you, hold on a minute, you know, I'm working my little socks off here, I'm just as good as anybody else, you know. In fact, I've got friends that can read and write brilliantly, but they're still not putting themselves out there. So I think we just need to hone on to our strengths, and that's what I do. And I constantly promote the benefits of what I'm bringing, and that's why I'm trying to promote the neurodivergent thing at work, to promote the fact that we bring a lot of benefits rather than what they traditionally see, like Linda says about the dyslexic stare. And it's true, because suddenly you are an issue to them, because you're not like that. You're not quick like everybody else. You're not doing what everybody else is doing. You're not doing things in the same way that somebody else is doing it. But I say, no, I'm not. But my quirky way of working is actually bringing so many more benefits. You can have a conveyor belt of people that think the same way, but is that really what a business wants? Or do you want people that can be creative and think outside the box and do things slightly differently? So I would say, promote the benefits, promote, and don't be afraid of that. I say that with ease, when realistically I'm often sometimes petrified when I say that to people. But I think, you know, it by doing that, it makes people think.
That's
Does that help? I've probably a very long-winded answer to what you asked.
No, that's very useful. I will have to look at the recording again to get all the points. But yeah, no, that was good. Thank you. And I remembered the other thing that, because Linda said about the mental health, that access, well, I don't know if you mentioned access to work in relation to mental health, but I was thinking, yeah, access to work will give you kind of recommend assistive technology, to give you coaching, in work coaching, but maybe it's something to now add to it, that there's some kind of mental health, wellness element that's added to people's assessments. And that's another money thing, of course, but which probably means that it probably won't happen, but it's something that sounds like needs to be added as well to people's access to work assessments and needs assessments at work. So yeah.
I would suggest, if again, another option for that, look at the supply chain school that I put the link in, because they actually have topics on mental health as well, and promote all that. So there's a lot of information there as well. So I would look into that as a resource tool.
Yeah, that would be good. But I mean, as part of what people, when people get, what people are offered for their reasonable adjustments for their assessments and everything, it would be good if that was part of it as well, kind of mental health, kind of I don't know, therapy or something along those kind of, mindfulness or whatever. It might be an idea. Yeah.
It's worth it's worth looking if the organize, because again my organization has mental health champions. They do a lot around that, and they are people that you can talk to, and there's, again, not all companies do that. I think it's just because we're in construction, and obviously suicide's quite high in that industry, unfortunately. But they have free helplines where you can talk to people. They do an awful lot around the mental health. Obviously it's not mental health around what we're something, but you can talk to them about anything. So again, it's worth checking, because until I really started working for them, I wasn't aware that they did all that. So again, it's probably worth checking, see if your organisation does anything on that as well, and has some policies.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem. Linda, I can see your hand up. Hi, Linda.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I've just popped a few things in the chat. Many organisations link to an organisation called the Employers Assistance Programme, who can offer you counselling and support that way, and I certainly used that. And my access to work assessment enabled me to have support from an organisation called Genius Within, which offered some CBT support and also some strategies for coping. And you can have training for your manager actually added into that, but that requires goodwill and cooperation on both sides. So but it can be there. Have that conversation with your assessor.
Okay then, James has put his hand up. We do need to move on to address some of the questions that Becky put forward, and I think the last two questions are quite important that Becky put forward. We will go to you, James, briefly, because I'm aware that Linda's had 3 goes, so it's only fair that James has 2. But the question that Becky has put forward is about how do we drive change, and I think it's linked to how do we have meaningful action. So that's what we need to now consider for the next few minutes, the last part of this session. So just think about that, and we go back to James. Did you want to make a point, James?
Yes, in terms of meaningful action, and there was mention of Genius Within. Genius Within are very good. One of the services that they can offer is co-coaching with managers. And however, the wording to sell it to your management is a facilitated conversation between.
That makes sense, yeah, because that's more positive than them saying they need coaching.
Yes, so there'll be yourself, your manager, and somebody who understands your issues and some of the legal stuff as well, be able to deal with any apparent issues that you are presenting. Now, when I say apparent, there can be wider problems with the organisation which may need addressing.
No, agreed.
Okay.
Good.
Right.
Okay.
I shall pass the ball back to Catherine.
Okay, meaningful action for moving forward. Has anybody got any points? Linda's got some really good points in the chat and has come up with some good points. Everybody has come up with some good points. Is there a really key piece of action that a community such as ours can engage in? Anybody got any thoughts? We have been talking about the psychological wear and tear on people in terms of specifically isolation. It does seem to me that training packages ought to be and support packages should be made available not only to management but to employees. And I think this is part of what you were offering, Becky, in your resources. You say that
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And thing is, they've took it one step further with regards to, because this is open to everybody in construction and infrastructure and anybody else. It's targeted more at that area. That it's a complete, and because they don't charge anybody to access any of this information, it's got, I can't remember what the last total was, but it's thousands upon thousands of members all accessing this free resource. You can, because it's all online, you can, and the videos are recorded. There's some live ones, there's some videos. It's really trying to upskill the whole industry and change perceptions, change mindsets. In fact, you've just given me a thought that I'm thinking I might contact them and suggest that they should probably put something like this on. So that's a thought, just to try and because I've not seen anything particularly around neurodiversity on there. So I'm now going to go back and have another look at that. But I think it's about, like you said, the training. And training has to be done as well, I would say, in a way that is suitable for all, because just getting people in a room doesn't always work. People learn in different ways, people learn at different times even of the day, because some people are more productive later on. So I think having a range of different tools, which again, that's why the supply chain school is really useful, because they do live chats, they do recordings, they do articles, then to make sure, see if you've retained it at the end, and it's optional, you can do like a mini multiple choice test, and then if you pass it, you get a certificate, which actually helps you if you're looking for more work, and you can say, well, actually I've done all these different subjects to show my wider awareness.
It also strikes me that another piece of meaningful action is to have you cloned, Becky.
Oh, bless. Thank you.
More people like you, don't we? We need more champions who are good at communication, actually, or just devise different ways of communicating with people. Because some people are not that good at communication, but we need good communicators to communicate these issues well. And I think that you're doing some fantastic work there in the workplace.
No, smiling away.
Anybody else just have a last point about meaningful action?
Sadia, hello.
Hi. So a while ago, myself and my union colleagues, we put in an open letter. It was called a disability open letter to our employers. And one of the suggestions we made was to have something like a passport system where, you know, where a person with dyslexia, for example, where their needs assessment results, like reasonable adjustments, their recommendations are all put into this passport. And if there is you know, turnover of staff, including management, or they change department, if the employee changes department, this passport travels with them, and they don't have to repeat themselves. Because quite often what was happening in my organization is whenever a new manager came, you know, people like myself, we would have to repeat ourselves over and over again about what our needs were, etc. And this passport system would just be like an official document that management would have to read.
Did you find that people read that? Did it work? Because I think that's a really good. I do think that's a really good idea. The only thing is, I've noticed from the past, because I've changed managers a few times, particularly in this job and before that. And even though things have been said and it's listed, you do find that you do have to repeat yourself and explain it in a slightly different way to every different person. Yeah. I mean, did you find that worked?
Well, no, my employees didn't implement the idea. They still haven't implemented it. It's just a recommendation that we made in our open letter. But one of the, you know, the intentions behind it was to, you know, reduce the mental health impact of having to repeat yourself over and over again, you know, and the stress that causes. So, you know, in an ideal situation, I would like to see it implemented. I would like to see it trialed and see how it works. But I think it's a brilliant idea, you know. It's just It's just to have that official document with you, which new managers would have to read.
I think BT do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it's part of their policies. So yes, there are some companies doing it and doing it well.
That's good. So could you almost use it if you're trying to get it into an organization, you could use them as a benchmark and basically refer and say this organization is doing it well. Because what I've noticed is with companies is particularly again in the sector I work in, a lot of people don't come up with new ideas. They just look what their competitors doing, or even sometimes a lot of people always look at what happens in the supermarket and then take that idea on board, especially if they can link it to actually it's making that organization more efficient or making that company more desirable or making people at the moment with labour being such an issue of being able to keep resource. If it means they're able to have a less turnover of staff, that might encourage them to do it. So again, it's more turning it on its head and explaining by doing this, these are the benefits it brings, and these leading companies like BT are actually implementing these changes. And I think by doing that, it puts it to them in a different way rather than actually it's already been proven. We're not asking you to be the first to do it. We're just asking you to implement what's worked well for another organisation.
Okay, D.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, actually, to kind of comment on what Sadia said. I mean, I've recently joined the neurodiverse group. I work for a council, and they're thinking about the passports. I know that was mentioned recently as well, and I think it's something that we're putting together an action plan, and I think it's on the action plan and it's going to HR. So you know, I'll let you know if what happens with that. But I was, oh my gosh, my brain, my memory. I was going to say something else, and can I remember what it was? Sorry.
Well, all right, I'll come back to you. Don't worry, I can always come back. I'm gonna say
Yeah.
don't worry at all.
And we'll move on to.
Oh no, it's come back. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I work for a council, but I work in libraries, and so I'm kind of on front line. Well, I used to be, I'm kind of not at the moment, but one thing that frontline workers have this issue with is kind of time to take part in things that are going on, take part in training. Sometimes, you know, that there'll be online training and it'll be recorded, but people can't even really watch the recordings because not everybody has a laptop. And if you have a laptop anyway, that means that you're going to probably be watching these things in your own time at home. Because when you're on the shop floor, you have to be on the shop floor. There isn't so much time during the day to really spend time doing trainings and things like that. So I think it's kind of providing more time for frontline staff to be able to take part in things, as you know, as a group. I think I can't remember your question exactly, Catherine, but you kind of posed the question to us all, and that's my response to it. Yeah.
Meaningful action. Just a quick point to everybody. If you have a question that you want to ask, one thing I do is I put keywords down on a piece of paper next to me just to remember what I'm going to say. It might be helpful, okay?
I do sometimes, but I'm feeling lazy tonight, so yes. Thanks.
You could ask for a training hour, you know, like that could be you know, if you're not getting time at work because they're not doing it, you could put forward because they're putting all this training on, so money is being invested for this training to be put forward. And as an inclusive employer, especially because it's a council, could they not dedicate, like give you like an hour a week of a training hour or something like that to enable you to choose which of the videos, because otherwise they're spending all this money on and you're not getting to watch them, so that money's being spent, you're not getting to use it, and also they're not upskilling the workforce or being fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think they do. I mean, when there's enough staff, there is kind of things are put into the rota so that people can spend time on their training and things like that. But the thing is, there's not enough staff, but also, so you don't always get the time to do that. But I think it has to be something that is kind of a bit more, there's a more formal system about it so that it actually does happen. And it's a regular thing for everybody, and it's not kind of, you know, when there's enough time to fit it in, it's got to be a more regular thing, I think.
Yeah, that's why I think if they schedule the time in, like you've got your dedicated hours or whenever it is, you know, where they do something where they've got to give you that time.
Yeah,
Exactly. Andrew and Ursula, and that'll be our final questions, okay? Andrew.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, I've looked in the chat. I mean, obviously we've started to talk about sort of disability confident, and this scheme can be very useful. So if an employer discloses before they arrive, or if they are diagnosed with disability during their employment, you can get adjustments there. And actually talking to a person on an individual basis. And something that I do as part, kind of like a mini sideline, is once a year, normally around June, I'm doing a staff awareness talk next month, is actually getting everyone to come along to an event. And so everyone benefits from having that shared approach. So, you know, I'm going to be talking about, you know, living authentically as a disabled person next month, so people can hear firsthand. And also, you know, if people don't necessarily understand, have like an open door policy. So when we get people who are apprentices, one of the first things I do is I send them a message on our Skype. Hi, I'm Andrew. We spoke earlier on our Scrum. Please ask me any questions. And I have that policy. So if anyone wants to have a chat, rather than feeling, you know, a bit kind of alone, or if they're new to the industry, at least we can have that chat. Because when people have that chat, they can make a connection, then that can then lead to people to open up. And, you know, and obviously in terms of the Mental Health Awareness Week, it's really important because unfortunately there is still a stigma, yet many of us will have experienced a range of mental health conditions as a result of discrimination. And obviously it is quite common, comorbid with sort of dyspraxia, dyslexia, and Asperger's. So it's not kind of, it's, people need to know that they're not alone. And when I was at BPP, we used to sponsor the Time to Change campaign, you know, and people shouldn't suffer alone. And yeah, I think that we do need more clones, I'm afraid, Becky.
Yeah, I'm not sure my mum would agree. She'd be like, "Oh, one of you's enough. One of you's enough."
Hey, that was rather nice. Thank you. Right. Ursula, you're the final person, and meaningful action.
Hi, Ursula.
Oh dear, hi. Well, I'll try and be brief. I was just thinking that actually we could have a whole session on disability passport, because there's that many organisations developing it. It's become a bit of a buzzword. And I know there was one Department of Work and Pensions we're looking at, because I don't know if anyone here was involved in that. I wasn't, but I did. Somebody showed me on screen what had happened, or what we think had happened, and basically they developed a Word document, and anyone can do that. Any organisation can do that, and but the bit that's the clever bit, the bit that we need, is how do you keep it up to date? So you've still got a record of, I tried this, it didn't work. I had that, it's not relevant now, I'm not doing that bit of the job or that job. How do you make sure the right people see it? If it's a Word document, then the onus is on the individual to keep a copy and pass it on. Exactly the same as their diagnostic assessment, if it's that kind of disability. Exactly the same as if it's their, you know, they've had an OH report done for occupational health, their assessment of needs, maybe even, you know, DSA stuff if they're going into the workplace. The same problem's still there. You as an individual have to keep and get hold of this stuff and then be responsible for passing it on. And how do you update it? It needs to be a wider thing. And if your employer's doing it, my employer's doing it, that employer's doing, that employer's doing it, it's not transferable, is it? So I don't know. We can fill an hour on that, I'm sure.
I think that's quite like Ursula, actually, and I think that's a really good idea to have a session on the passport, because you're right. It increasingly companies are taking it on board, but as I understand it, it's between the employee and their line manager. So as you say, who else sees it? Because apparently it's meant to be a confidential piece of work as well for the employee, isn't it? It's just simply a dialogue that's a live dialogue between the line manager and the employee to make sure that everybody gets what they need and want. And of course, we know that most of the issues are with line managers, so that's trying to solve. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to have a session on the passport. Would you like to do that, Ursula?
Yeah, actually I can do, because I'm going to the NADP conference. I'm attending the Manchester one. I don't know if anyone have been to NADP conferences before, National Associate of Disability Practitioners. It's a really odd kind of format this year. They used pre-COVID, they do one in the south and one in the north on the same topic, and then they'd have like an AGM with a conference in the middle of the country. This year there's an online day, which if you're a non-member, I think it's £35 to attend, or if you attend the in-person day, you can attend the online bit. So there is a session at those where there's a panel discussion about passports, so that'll be interesting. And I'm on one of the panels on one of the days, and my colleague is doing the other, where the panel for the morning bit is a discussion on transitioning into work from university. So a flavour of workplace support. So I'm really interested in the passport discussion bit, because that's definitely something my employer wants to look at, which is a university. So you can see why you'd want it for your students as well as your employers. But as I say, it's no good if you have to fill in a different one when you go somewhere somewhere else. So if anyone have solved these issues, that'd be great. But yeah, I'd be happy to pass on what I've learned from that. And Andrew says he's been to some before. Maybe other people might be interested in that particular event.
What is the date?
I might still have the link open. The online one is quite soon, because they're all happening in June. So yeah, so the dates are 13th is the online one of June, 15th is in person in Reading, and 29th is June. So I'll paste that into the dates into the chat, and then put the link in. As I say, look, what's quite different this time and quite nice is they've got an option for if you just want to enroll on the online one. But that very topic is one of the panel discussions there.
Okay, well, I'm going to contact you, Ursula, to work out a month that you might want to speak in, okay? Because I think it would be really useful for people to hear your feedback from that event and what you
yeah, I mean, I'm certainly no expert, but a bit of a discussion. But yeah, I've had on my to-do list to send you a membership form. But today I've actually printed it and got it out.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ursula, and everybody else, Andrew, James, Andre, everybody who has contributed, Linda, to this quite vibrant discussion. But particularly thank you to Becky.
Yeah, thank you, Becky. That was great.
Oh.
Yeah, really good.
You're all very welcome. I was glad it went well. That's the main thing.
No, it's really good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No, thank you everybody for inputting, because with